Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar video. In this one I want to do my initial thoughts on Avatar Legends Realms Collide, the new mobile game that for a lot of regions, most regions, did come out earlier this week. So I know a lot of people have had access to the game for a lot longer. I know some countries still don't have the game yet, but I think that it is coming out everywhere basically, and will be out everywhere within the next couple of weeks. I think that's the plan. I think after we're 6 days in at this point, I think I've played enough to give some initial kind of thoughts here, while also acknowledging that, look, it's a mobile game. It's more about sort of what they add to it as things go on, what the roadmap is, how regular the updates are, and of course the game could look quite different in a couple of months, but we'll see how it goes. I still think in launch week, it's absolutely worth getting some initial thoughts out there. So just some notes, some caveats out of the way at the start here is that, like I said, I'm aware the game is in this weird situation where it's technically fully out. It's basically global release, but it's not quite everywhere. Fair enough. They get a little bit of grace, as you know, for the first week or two, couple of weeks, while everything gets released. That's fine. I also would note that I'm approaching this primarily as an Avatar fan, that is the main reason I am playing this game, is because it's an Avatar mobile game. I would say typically I don't play that many mobile games. I enjoyed the last Avatar mobile game, Avatar Generations, and was very disappointed when it shut down. I think there was some excitement surrounding the release of this game, but I think the type of game that it is immediately, I think, turned a lot of people off. I've never actually played a mobile game that's kind of this genre before, the kind of city builder, building an alliance, going after territory type thing. And so, you know, I have a slightly different opinion on this game when it comes to okay, just as a game, I feel this way. But the Avatar usage in this game I feel kind of differently about. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to get across in this video here. So kind of jumping in, my overall thoughts on the game are just that as a game, I think for what it is, it's fine. I don't feel super negatively about it, where I think it's just a disaster. I can see some people absolutely just not liking this game, not really wanting to play it. I think most people maybe should give it a chance just to see how you kind of feel about it. But I understand if you immediately bounce off it because it is a very specific type of game. But for the type of game that it is, it seems relatively functional. It seems like it is launched in a mostly kind of feature complete kind of state, in that, unlike say Avatar Generations, where when you first launched the game, half the menus were like coming soon. Whereas in this game, I think the only coming soon thing that's just directly here is the third thing on the campaign, which I'm not even sure what it is. Otherwise, everything is pretty much here and functional, and you're not really left particularly waiting for anything else that's kind of meant to come to the game kind of shortly. So they've managed to launch the game, I think, in a state where I think they've got past a bunch of the bug problems that they maybe had with some of the earlier soft launches. I haven't had that many problems with it. Obviously, like I said, the reason I'm not kind of being super negative here is that even though I can acknowledge that this style of game is not my style of game. If this wasn't Avatar, I don't think I would play a game like this. But for what it is, it's fine. It's pretty hands-off. Most of what you're doing is looking at your city, building it as you go through the various kind of tutorial stuff. You're just clicking on stuff to kind of upgrade it. Then you're activating the next thing. You're checking if you have the resources, and just making your timers kind of go off. That's kind of what you're doing here. As you can see here, I'm recruiting a bunch more kind of benders here. And just to get my power kind of up in that way. And it's just activating timers, kind of collecting your resources, helping your alliance, requesting help from your alliance members to make those timers go down. And in that sense, you know, it's one of these games where I think after you get through a lot of the initial stuff, where maybe you want to grind it out a little bit more, the game feels very hands-off. You come on, you activate a few timers, you maybe do a few of the kind of battles out in the field, and you leave until you maybe come back a little bit later on and do the same. And then maybe you eventually hit a power level where like you kind of unlock a few more things and can be a little bit more active, and you go from there. And that's kind of my kind of fundamental thoughts on the game, is that if you can bring yourself to kind of invest in any way in what this game is doing, if you like what this game is doing and you're also an Avatar fan, there's fun to be had here. I don't think this game is like best in class or anything like that. Not that I feel like particularly know if it is or isn't that. But I just get the sense that, you know, it's a solid enough one of these type of games. And in that sense, you know, like I said, that's not what the core of, I think, my review is about. What I will focus on, and where I'll maybe bring in a little bit more of the negativity overall, is just in its approach to doing the kind of Avatar stuff. So straight away, I think everyone pointed this out the second this game was announced. The problem with this game fundamentally is just that I don't think this style of game is a particularly strong fit for Avatar as an IP. I really just don't feel it works super well, where the focus is very much about building an army, using the characters who we know from the show to be the leaders of your army, and then going out and taking out other armies, gathering, building up territory, fighting other people, and it being about that. Sure, in the lore of Avatar, there's like mentions of this happening, you know, Chin the Conqueror and his army. But Avatar is never overly focused on the kind of the warfare, territorial gains aspect, I think, massively. So this feels like, you know, it's a kind of fits because it's sort of there in the lore, but it's not really what the franchise ever really focuses on. So the fact that like the majority of the game is, like you sort of see on the map here, it's like you have your city, you have your alliance, you build your buildings, you claim pieces of territory, you expand out and go into other pieces of territory. So you can see my alliance has these two pieces of territory. Now, are we ever really going to build it up enough, given that we're kind of trapped a little bit in this corner, to take out some of these bigger guilds and stuff like that? I'm not really sure. The whole aim of the game is to get towards the middle and eventually take the Temple of Corruption. And we'll get into talking about the story more, but that's ultimately what you are aiming to do, because the main place where it tells you the overall goal of the game is here, in this. So you can see we've got through a lot of these initial ones, but then the one at the end, of course, is Father Glowworm, capture Temple of Corruption 1 time. So I'm not even sure if my alliance is ever going to get to the point where we're going to be able to do that, but it's not that you have to do it, it's just that your server, your world, someone has to do that to kind of achieve that. So an interesting one overall. So I think like that mostly covers a lot of my thoughts. I'll bring up bits and pieces about the game, I guess, as we kind of go forward in the discussion, but that is a lot of kind of what we're doing here. It's just like you go in and you're just upgrading stuff. Like I have like a lot of extra kind of resource gathering things that are kind of low level, so I can just upgrade them when I need to here, and it only takes, the initial levels only take a few seconds, and then immediately you're active and able to move on to the next one, and that sort of stuff. You can see here I have my town hall, I'm trying to build this. You can use speed up items to make it go a little bit quicker, but when you get low, you kind of do just have to wait out the amount of time. There is a bit of a pay to win aspect to this game, in the sense that nothing really limits you from just like buying a lot of gems, buying a lot of items with real money, and just accelerating everything to an insane degree. Because your power could just be directly increased by using these on timers, like you can just continuously keep buying this, because, you know, you can just like finish the queue like with kind of whatever you need, because you could just buy unlimited like speed ups with the gems if you really need to. So it does take away, I think, a little bit from the the somewhat novel aspect of the game in terms of like, oh cool, I want my alliance to have the most territory, but then you realize that like, oh, this guild over here, they probably have a lot of players who are putting a lot of money in, and we don't stand a chance here whatsoever. So even my guild just getting these 2 slots, it was like, it took a few days of realizing like, oh, we have to really move away from some of these people, like into the corner, to get some free kind of territory. Otherwise, like, we don't have a chance. But that's my thoughts on the game. It's just that, like, I just feel it's very middle of the road, kind of uninspiring. Avatar Generations, the style of game that it was much more suited to Avatar than what this is, because it makes good use of the character. That game made good use of the characters. I don't think this one really does. Part of it is just like, how do your characters actually get used? Because you know, you can go to the hero menu and you can see them here, and it's cool, I have them. But then when I use them as part of the game, what am I doing? Effectively, you are trying to build up effectively 4 kind of leaders, one for each kind of element / nation, and they will be the leader of your army of that particular nation / element. So you can immediately see there's a bit of a flavor fail here, in the sense that, why is there an air nomad army in any sense going on here? And it's obviously a gameplay conceit, because they have this army-based game, and even though one of the nations does not lean in that direction at all, it has to be somewhat equal. So yeah, this game has the very weird thing of, you'll have Tenzin, you can even have Milo leading an army of thousands of benders, which lore-wise doesn't really make that much sense. Now, of course, the game is non-canon, ultimately, outside of, I guess, official art, but the story stuff is non-canon, and we will kind of get into talking about it there. But the idea is that, yeah, again, like, you can see the characters in the menu, but then when it comes to actually like doing stuff out in the field, you just create a new troop of characters. We'll use these 3 here, because my Tenzin's leveled up enough that he can bring 2 other leaders with him. So I'll bring Suki and Zuko with me, and we'll march. Now, this will be a very easy win, because it's just a level 3 opponent, but you can sort of see what's happening here. We're just marching out from my base, which is over here, and you can see it on the field here. Even if we zoom in, it's pretty, you know, low res. Like, you don't really get to see them that much. You can tell it's the 3 characters I chose, but then behind them you can sort of see that, like, it's just some generic, you know, units. And there's the fight over. There's a rough idea of, like, you could follow the meters going up to signal when the characters would use their kind of main ability, but otherwise it was just like pretty small health bars kind of going down. The only other thing in the game is that really shows you battling is when you go into the Avatar Trail in the campaign. If you do one of these, as you can sort of see here, you can see the characters a little bit more closely, and you can have like 5 kind of groups of characters, and you can like line them up the way you want to get different bonuses. But then once you start, you can see here, this is it. This is probably the clearest you get to see the characters, because it's just focused on, it's not out in the overworld. And again, like Sokka's about to use a special ability here, and you got a quick boomerang effect. I get it, I have it on like 2 times speed, but still, when you slow it down to the proper speed, the effects are happening so quickly you can barely tell it's really happening. And so the difference between characters doesn't really feel like it comes across very well when you actually utilize them. So you spend like a lot of your time in this game trying to get the characters that you want, but then you're just putting them in charge of kind of the same core giant group of units that you had previously, and they're all basically doing the same thing. Like, sure, technically, I didn't pass that one because I'm not quite powerful enough, but you can see there's rewards you get all over the place just for kind of clicking everything. So it has that kind of slightly addictive quality of just everywhere there's something that's like catching your attention, that like, oh, the timer on this is activated, so I can do the next stage of my expedition to level this up to get more kind of items and stuff like that. There's a lot of technical like things to do, but a lot of it is just clicking into various different menus, and there's not much else kind of going on sort of beyond that. Giving it a little bit more praise, like I said, it's somewhat feature complete. Avatar Generations, when it launched, only introduced the sort of clan features right towards the end, and we didn't really even get a chance to do anything with them before the game shut down. Here, the alliance stuff is right here. It kind of has to be because it's like a central core of the game, and it's kind of cool. You know, making your own alliance, bringing people in and seeing the kind of progress that you make kind of working together in terms of like people are asking for like help on specific attacks against some of the different kind of units on the field, and you can just like join in if you want. So in like 17 minutes, this battle's about to happen. Okay, I'll join in. What am I doing here? No, okay, so I'll get rid of that. I'll only go in with 2. I'll send these 2 in. These are my 2 most powerful characters, and we can check on kind of like the menu here. You can see 8 out of 10 squads are in here. So me doing 2 allows another group of 2 to come in, which will be kind of slightly more powerful than someone only having to go in with 1 leader. So that's why I did it that way. Now, it should be a pretty easy win because it's only a level 1 Shattered Skulls Fortress, but you know, you get the idea. The alliance stuff is kind of cool because, you know, you do eventually start building buildings. You know, so we have 2 bases, we have 2 pieces of territory, we have our fortress and our front line, which if we scroll over, where is it again? Yeah, we're up here. So you can see here's my city, our fortress, the initial base in the area that we're in, and then we also have the base over here. Where is it? Over here is also ours. So that's cool because, you know, you can see the territory gets covered in your own color. Now, you do have to protect these buildings. Of course, other groups can attack them if they want. Still a little bit unclear on some of the mechanics about this. The game definitely, with some of its stuff, doesn't explain itself very well. Like, as an example, in the alliance section, you can see the members are split into different groups where you can have rank 1 members, 2, 3, 4, and I'm technically rank 5 because I'm the leader. I can promote people up from the basic rank 1. The game never tells you what the difference between rank 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is. Obviously, with rank 5, I have complete control over everything because I'm the leader. I looked it up, and it seems like 1, 2, and 3 are basically just organization stuff to just have people in different groups. It doesn't really do anything as such. Rank 4, I believe, is basically like co-leader, so it gives certain things, but it doesn't say, like, there's no like clicking on it to say what rank 4 like means. What do other people get or not get access to? Because if you just promote people randomly, you can leave yourself in a position where, like, maybe you promote the wrong person to be your co-leader and they spend all the kind of group's points maybe replenishing the shop, but then you don't have those points to spend on the buildings later. And it's just like stuff like that feels like it could be a bit clearer about like when the game has proper tutorials versus when it doesn't. This game feels like it's very reliant on people having like built-in knowledge of these type of games already and how they work and spreading that knowledge around ultimately. There's even stuff like for instance, another one that I maybe want to quickly cover here, strongholds, this plus thing. I can appoint someone to be the mayor of our bases, but again, it doesn't tell me what that does. Does it mean anything or not? Looking it up online, people seem to think it's a big joke, that the main thing actually is that like there's no actual benefit really to it. It's just that it makes it sort of complicated if you ever wanted to like maybe like leave an alliance, that you have to somehow step down as being mayor, and that's kind of complicated to do. I don't kind of understand some of that stuff. It's a bit kind of confusing. But yeah, the game is, it's not very hands-on. It's not much of a game, almost, is what I would say. You don't play it. Like, some of the stuff can feel a little bit like it's kind of just doing chores, effectively. but there is a sort of fun factor to it to just see the numbers going up and, keeping track of your resources. If you want to get really crazy about it and organize your town, there is that available. There's not too many of them available, but there is more like decorative kind of stuff that's available in the game, and eventually you'll be able to kind of have these kind of fancier alternate versions of buildings and stuff like that, which is, somewhat interesting, I think. But yeah, it is just kind of keeping your timers going. So from there, let's actually go into the more Avatar aspect of things and why I feel so let down by this game on that front. So I talked a bit about characters and how I don't think the game ultimately makes great use out of the characters. But I think the big problem with it is just on multiple fronts. It's one, yes, the characters don't feel like they do much in the game because there's not a lot of gameplay that really involves them. The difference between them is not as big as you maybe kind of think it is, and that, like, sure, you can see here, there's the difference in rarity level. So of course the power level is going to be slightly different. The characters have different traits depending on what element they are. Are they defense? Are they attack? Are they more of a garrison unit? Or are they more of a kind of versatile unit? Some of them are more focused on gathering from the field. And that's kind of cool to a certain degree. But ultimately, like, the talent trees for the characters is relatively similar. It's pretty similar across the board. It's just slightly more focused towards, like in Piandau's case, gathering, and in other characters' cases towards, this thing. So the characters fundamentally are just sort of different stats blocks, rather than it feeling like, say, in Avatar Generations, like the characters had very unique abilities, very unique attack animations. They were clearly a very different game piece to other characters. It's sort of true here, but it's a little bit more like table of numbers rather than like the cool factor of the character really showing themselves as being very different, because you can see the animations in game for the characters when I did those fights rarely showcased much of anything. So the idea of, like, Tenzin, if we look at his skills, like, oh, he has tornado, but like it's a half a second like effect that kind of happens. It's not that super fancy. Maybe when I get to the enhanced one it'll look a little bit better, but it feels like the characters never get a chance to showcase themselves. So when you finally do get, like, say, Korra, I was waiting ages to get Korra because she's part of the main story with the Hall of Avatars. Then you get to the end and it's like, wait 3 days, and it's like, okay, that's a lot though, especially early on. And I finally have her, but it's like, it's going to take so long for her to get to a level where she's on par with my other characters. So I guess I just have to stick with Sokka as my water character for now, because Korra's not quite where she needs to be. And there's that aspect to it. It's just that it seems like the game is somewhat generous about, like, giving you the character eventually. For the first time, you need 10 shards for the character. And that's why it says 0 out of 10 for these two. But you need, like, so many more to get to the level. Like, where say Suki and Tenzin are at. Like, look how many she needs. She needs 50 just to go up the next fraction of a star. That will take her up to being a full 4-star character. And it's the same with, like, say, Tenzin. He needs 50 again to begin the start of the 5-star thing. And that's just going to take a really, really long time. And it's already a little bit of a challenge to get them from maybe like 1.5 star up to like 3 and 4. So, a lot of these other characters, especially if they're high level, like the legendary characters here, that's a real challenge. So there is that aspect of just, I finally got the character I want. Oh, they're not ready yet. And then even when you finally get them at the front of your unit, it's like, this is fine, but it's also not like very Asami focused. It's just Asami instead of Piandau leading my firebender soldiers. And that's all that's really happening there. Like, her model here on screen is kind of cool. You do get a little bit of flavor text about the characters, which is kind of cool. And especially when the novel characters do come in, that will be nice to see. But it just feels a little lacking, that, like, it really doesn't make great use of the characters. Speaking of which, there's only 19 in the game. before I get into addressing that whole situation, why there's so few, straight away, the reason I don't have Azula is because Azula is the only character who is currently locked behind the paywall. You do have to pay money to get Azula. I believe it's only that you have to pay like €1 to kind of start that process, and you can eventually kind of get her in that way. So it is what it is, but she is behind the paywall. Kyoshi, for now, is behind the paywall. You can buy some of the bundles to get her right now if you want, but you'll note it says that she will be available as part of an event. It's just that that event is not on right now, but if you wait, you can get Kyoshi. I think this is where we get into a problem though, because this game has been, you can look up footage of this game going back like 9 months to a year. Kyoshi was part of the Hall of Avatars in some of the earlier kind of iterations of the game. It's now, the Hall of Avatars now is just Aang and Korra, and I don't even know if other characters will get added in, because it's kind of weird that Kyoshi isn't in there when she was before. They plan to add Roku in and Yang Chen, but that's very obvious because the game's called Avatar Legends. Of course you're going to have those two characters coming in. Like, why wouldn't you? But why aren't they here already is my kind of question, ultimately. The same goes for like other characters. Like, again, the first kind of test version of the game that they put out for that initial test, it had like Unalaq in it. If you remember correctly, they had stuff like Mako is, I think, still in some of the early promo kind of screenshots up on like the Google Play Store for this game. Roku's already in there, but those characters are not part of the lineup. You can see here, the selection is basically mostly ATLA characters, a couple of Korra characters, one of the new original characters for the game, and Kyoshi as the lone representative that's not Aang or Korra era. And even then, this is very clearly past Avatar Kyoshi, as kind of represented by Avatar The Last Airbender, rather than teenage Kyoshi. So I wouldn't even say she counts as a novel character right now. We'd need to get one of the other characters, or very clearly younger Kyoshi, like we got in Avatar Generations. But there's only 19 characters. I think that is a crazy low amount of characters to have. I get it, you don't want to go overboard. Like, you don't want to jump in here and there be 60 at launch. But under 20 is, in my mind, insane when 2 of them are inaccessible for free-to-play players, at least right now. It's just a really low amount, and especially with the selection that they have, you'd think that like they might have more, but there's maybe a few more kind of maybe King Kwei level characters where they're a little bit more minor. They're not really the go-to characters, but there's a lot of common characters like that. No, it is a lot of the main cast. Obviously there's a bunch of exceptions, like there's no Mako Bolin right now, that sort of thing. It is a little bit, frustrating, but it's also just like there's so few of them. Like, in just 6 days, I do actually have all of the characters that like you can just get from playing the game. And it's not a great selection because the game's called Avatar Legends. And it's called Avatar Legends Realms Collide. Both parts of the title refer to the idea of eras, kind of multiple eras. Avatar Legends, whenever it's used on an Avatar product, always refers to its multi-era, typically using all of the eras. And in Realms Collide, the premise of the game is very clearly the idea of these eras crossing over. So you have Tenzin interacting with young Aang, this iteration of Aang, that sort of thing. But you haven't used any of the other eras, which gets us into one of the big problems with this game, and that is that the story, the known non-canon story with Chan Yu and the Shattered Skulls, is borderline non-existent in the game. And I think this is probably one of the heaviest criticisms I have for this game, because if you look at the marketing for this game, the story is kind of presented as being front and center. They're always talking about in those posts on social media, like, defeat Chan Yu and the Shattered Skulls, Father Glowworm, over and over again, all of this stuff. A few of the other characters have been mentioned in social media posts from months ago. There's like nothing in the game really about these characters. You get the initial cinematic cutscenes, which explains a little bit. Then when you choose your leader, you drop in and your leader has a really quick cutscene where like he interacts with Chanyu and then meets Aang. So the only realms collide aspect you get is if you choose Air and Tenzin is your leader, you do get Tenzin meeting Aang. Otherwise, it's just the typical characters interacting, and the realms collide aspect is not really explained in any way. Now, part of this is that I think the big thing, Father Glowworm is clearly the big premise of the game. The game does not explain Father Glowworm in any way. Like, if you have not read the Kyoshi novels, like, do you even know what the deal is at all with Father Glowworm? Because none of it is presented, like, at all. Who he is, why you should maybe know what he is, what he did to Chanyu, what the dynamic really is there. None of it's really there on screen unless you are paying close attention or have read all the social media posts that have some of the lore, because most of the lore is not in the game. That I can see, at least. Like, you can see some of it is here. Like, if we go to the original character Borte, who is a Shattered Skulls member, but you can play as her, and if you open her character bio, it at least explains a few things. But like, where's this for Chanyu? Where's this for Morong, Fuzi, these other characters? This should, I think, be pretty front and center and not be like, what are we waiting for those other characters to get added? Are they going to be added? I'm very unclear, because they seem to present the idea that like we play as Borte because she kind of betrays the rest of the group, implying that we maybe won't get to play as the other Shattered Skulls members. So where's the information on those characters? So you can see here, like, she was meant to be a sacrifice to Father Glowworm, basically, at the Temple of Corruption, but talked her way away from being sacrificed. She's trying to manipulate Chanyu. She's now a high priestess, and this is why she's kind of trying to overthrow him. There's an idea there, but again, who are the Shattered Skulls? Why should I care? Who's Chanyu? Who's Morong? There is details out there that, like, I believe Chanyu and Morong are brothers. Chanyu, of course, is implied to be the spiritual one, so he has the Father Glowworm connection. He's the one who's actually enhanced by Glowworm's abilities. That's why he has the green glowing stuff on him, and stuff like that. Morong is apparently the king of their tribe. There's some stuff there, but I'm like, where's the lore? Like, where's the story? There's no narrative as part of this, like, at all. Even if you were interested, where is it? Like, because my understanding is that, like, there really isn't any other direct story in the game. So what's going on here? Like, you can look at the characters on the field and see a little bit. Like, you see here, it says Fuzi is the captain of Morong's guards. So, okay, he's just the main grunt guy. That's fine. Here's Morong. And look at that. The guy who actually has the interesting lore entry, it seems to be broken. What's the deal there? Even some of the other characters, it feels like it's almost an error. Togrul. And then it just mentions Fuzi. Like, is this guy another captain of the guards? Is he under Fuzi? What's going on here? Same goes for, like, Amur. Just mentions, like, Fuzi. Like, what's going on there? Borte is on the field, and if you look up her, it says she's the high priestess. But, like, where's the rest of the information? Like, they have not explained in any way how the crossover of eras really happens. Like, that's the most, I think, biggest indictment against the story of this game, is that it's all about realms collide, but they never attempt to explain to you how this has happened. Like, you just suddenly spawn in, and for me, it was Tenzin walks out of this random city that he's in control of in the middle of some plains, and there's Chanyu, and it's just assumed that everyone knows who he is. And then Aang shows up, and, like, there's no discussion about, like, why, how this has happened in some way. I'm guessing they want to explain it with Father Glowworm's abilities to kind of make kind of wounds between here in the spirit world, and that maybe this version of Glowworm, the non-canon version, can also make kind of wounds in reality, and kind of it affects time to create the crossover. But they didn't say any of that stuff, and that's the biggest problem, is that they said that the game is non-canon, apparently to allow them to be freer with just using characters from all eras, but they don't use the characters, like, for anything. So that just comes across as like, well, why did you make the game non-canon then? If you actually are not going to in any way use your non-canon story creatively and actually tell a story. Like there's literally press releases out there mentioning that like this story scenario is written by Tim Hedrick, writer on the show, and it's like, technically yes, but what is here? Where is the rest of this stuff? And this game, I just think, badly needs some sort of tab that has like some narrative thing that explains what the story is, that has background information for these characters. Because if you actually care about the story, there needs to be something in this game that more directly tells you what's going on. Because I think it's just pretty unacceptable what is, or rather isn't, in the game right now. On the character front, I also want to bring up the idea of, yeah, they said months and months ago, like 9 months ago, that novel characters are going to be in the game. They have not said, in my mind, from what I can see, a single extra thing with regards to when this is going to happen, what the characters are that are going to be joining in. If when they do join the game, that will mean they come with anything except just a new character has joined the game. Because I do feel if you add novel characters, you need to have some sort of story content to explain who they are for people who are not familiar with the novels. Like Avatar Generations did. They didn't just drop a bunch of characters on us. They made an attempt, and were in the process of telling the story of that first novel, like doing an adaptation of it. This game needs to have that. It needs to have more story related to this story that they have here, but I think it needs to just have a separate mode that can be story content, that maybe you add in a little bit of extra canon stuff, just to make the game a little bit more interesting overall. That's what I would kind of want out of this, is maybe something that you can do that's a little bit more single player orientated, that is just, hey, you can go through this kind of mode and you unlock bits of story content about the different eras and stuff like that. That's what it badly needs. I think they've taken an approach here where I think that there's just a lot of assumptions made to assume that people know who all this characters is, and especially when it comes to like Glowworm, and I just don't feel it has really worked out well for them. So to me, the Avatar aspect of this game has kind of been a little bit of a failure so far, and I want more. And I think the problem is that that's been feedback since like day one, that like kind of there needs to be more Avatar, whereas more characters, more story, and I have not seen changes for the positive in that regard in the game. And in fact, we've actually seen characters taken away from earlier versions of the game. Like, where's Unalaq? Amon is in the title card of the game. He's not in the game yet. Kyoshi has been moved from the Hall of Avatars into this weird pay for her until a bit later on situation. Some of these moves just I don't understand, and they do feel like just for financial reasons that this has been made. Not for any sake of the game, any sense of like caring for the franchise. It's just, how can we just use that to make money? And I get the game does have to make money. I understand that. And that's why I haven't really talked about the monetization stuff, because my thoughts on these games is always that, hey, the monetization stuff is there if you want to do it. You don't have to do it. But it does seem like if you probably want to be competitive with your alliance, you probably do need to spend some money. That seems to be the kind of general idea here. I'm pretty much going to wrap it up there with just, like I said at the start, I think it's a real mixed bag of a game. I think there's a potential here, but what they need to do to improve this is to drastically increase the Avatar flavor of this game. There needs to be more story, more usage of the characters, more different story content, especially when it comes to introducing those novel characters. You have to do something to get people up to speed with who they are. And it just overall needs to be a lot better. To me, the fact that they've announced like Boomy, Painted Lady Katara, Roku, and Yang Chen as like characters who are coming before anyone else, doesn't speak particularly well to what the plan is. And the other point is obviously roadmap, 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 roadmap. The game is now out. Where is the roadmap? I'll give you a couple of weeks because the game is just launched, sorting out any issues, getting it out in all the countries. But where is the roadmap for what the overall plan is for the game? Because I think a lot of people are noting it looks very similar in terms of core content to the way it looked many, many months ago. So what is the stuff that's actually coming to the game? Obviously, characters, but is there story content? What is like the other campaign mode? These type of things. That just features that are needed to just make Avatar fans care more about this game. Because I think you have the players who like this type of game, but you've really done nothing to grab Avatar fans massively, unless they were Avatar fans who are always going to be inclined towards this side of the game. Whereas I think what Avatar Generations did was that even though I think a lot of people actually didn't particularly like the game, they don't like mobile games in general, that game kept people on board because they were aware that if they just played enough to stay up to date, they could be part of stuff like the Kyoshi event and some of the new content events when they dropped. They wanted to be there when like the Azula banner with the other characters like Mei and Ty Lee dropped, and that was a huge event. Those were all huge events. Kyoshi and then the Azula character drops were massive in that game because of, you know, the game did enough to keep people invested because they were aware they'd be able to experience a certain amount of story content and then get a character as like a unique game piece. And it doesn't really feel like this game quite has that going for it right now. I maintain that I think that for the type of genre it is, even though I think it's a little bit mischaracterized for Avatar, this is not the type of game that I think Avatar is suited for. It seems pretty functional, and if you like this style of game, you'll get some enjoyment out of it. I just feel the failing points is it doesn't make use of the IP well enough. It really does feel like it's just an existing game with Avatar kind of haphazardly placed over the top of it. And I'm going to give them some time to improve that. And I think they need to improve it if they want the game to kind of, I think, remain strong and keep people beyond the first kind of initial kind of weeks where there's always going to be a bit of a hype with a big release for a popular franchise. They need to do more with the IP. They need to be more adventurous and not do what they've kind of, I think, done up to now, which is just bare minimum and just hope that does it. That's what needs to happen. So they're my initial thoughts on the game. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on the game. What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? Talk to me about it. What do you think the game needs to do to improve? But yeah, let me know in the comments below. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching and bye.